It's nice to Hey, hello everybody. It's nice to see you. We are recording this event and we will have these recordings posted on the Morro Bay Winter Bird Festival site. Some of them may be up today, maybe in a couple of days, but we're going to get them all up there for you. And so it's nice to see everybody again. What is it? I don't know if it's day 2 or day 3 or day 4 anymore, but we got a great lineup today and tomorrow. So thanks for joining us for with the Fly by the Seat of Your Pants Bird Festival, something we put together in a couple of days, and I'm glad you're here. Hey, we got a great speaker. First up, I get to be the speaker. Wow. So I'm really looking forward to present on some things that I really love. But before we do that, a couple of just regular old announcements and housekeeping things for everybody. Thanks for joining us. Again, we are videotaping this and it will be up in a few days. You will all be muted because having everybody talk at the same time is crazy. You can use the chat function. That's fine if you want to ask some questions. Don't bother using the raise hand function. We just aren't going to recognize you until maybe at the very end if we have some time for questions. A couple other things I want you to know. When we had to cancel this festival, we have to do refunds for over 600 people, which is way over $100,000 of refunds. That's what Rosemary, my wife, is doing right now as the treasurer of the Bird Festival. And then we have expenses that we can't make up. So now, while all of these Zoom programs are free, if you'd like to make a donation, we'll gladly take your donations. If you look on the screen right now at the bottom, there is a donate online button, and in the bottom right hand corner, if you want to go online, you can find a donation button and donate right there. In the bottom left, you'll see the donate by mail. Remember, that's the old fashioned snail mail. You will have to write a check if you can remember how to do that. And you will have to find a stamp. But if you do that, you can donate by mail. If you're one of those have one of those newfangled phones and you can put your camera on those squiggly QR codes, you can donate by Venmo to the left, or you can donate by PayPal on the right. By the way, Bob, leave that screen up. We have had about $7,000 or $8,000 of donations, which is going to give us a chance to have a festival again next year. We really appreciate it. And if you're able, we appreciate the donation. If you donate by Venmo, the limit is $299. And my friend Bob, who's running the Zoom behind the scenes, says, that's silly. Nobody's going to donate more than that. But guess what? We've had people donate $500 or $1,000. So if you're going to do that, you can't do it by Venmo, do it by PayPal or online, or just bring me a wheelbarrow of cash and we'll get it to the right place. Anyway, one way or the other, we really appreciate your help to make a in-person bird festival possible next year. So we are about to get started. This morning's speaker is me. Let me see. I've got my biography. Oh, you know what? I'll just see if I can wing it. I'm one of those newly retired guys who's busier now than I was when I was working, helping with the Bird Festival. I also really enjoy running the UC California Naturalist course. I do that both in Yosemite and Cambria. In fact, I've got a class coming up January 30th to February 1st at Camp Ocean Pines in Cambria. Love doing that. And I get to get paid to go teach nature in Yosemite with Road Scholar. So that's really fun. Those are the things I'm doing in retirement. And again, the biggest joy right now is I have a grandson. Wow, they're the best things ever. Grandkids are such a delight. So I've been working with raptors for a long time. And my mom has always encouraged me with my love of birds since I was a little kid. And so ever since I was a little kid, I had parakeets and I had other birds. And then I got to a point where I got to spend time with raptors, both in an animal hospital setting, in a nature setting, and in a falconry setting. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about raptors. So let me share the screen and then we'll get going. Let me see if I can get this up and running right now. And let me get on the slideshow function. Bob, how's that look to you? Is that okay? Okay, good. So here we are. We are going to talk about um, raptors through the ages. Let me see if I can just. This is me when I was a little kid. Um, so yes, I've had hawks and falcons and owls and things on my fist since I was little. And this one I don't know, 16 or 17, something. I was working at a camp, and I started using raptors in education early on. And let me see my functions. Here we go. And this is me nowadays. This is a Peel's peregrine falcon that I raised a couple years ago, and I've enjoyed handling and flying raptors. But this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the ancient history of human and raptor interactions, and we're also going to talk about the present. You know, what's going on right now with raptors. And if you're one of those note takers, there are going to be 10 points today, and 6 of them are right there. So we're going to talk about 10 different things, and 6 of them are on the screen. 4 of them are subpoints under falconry. So we'll talk about that. And at the end, we'll just give a nod to the peregrine falcons at Morro Rock, something that Steve talked about yesterday. So what are raptors in the first place? Steve Schubert brought that up a little bit yesterday. They've got sharp hooked beaks and sharp pointy toes, and they eat meat. They don't eat vegetables or seeds. They are obligate carnivores. And so there are hawks. Sometimes people just think, oh, it's hawks and falcons, or hawks and eagles, but it's hawks, falcons, eagles, owls, kites, which are very interesting, harriers, again, interesting, accipiters, which is a really amazing group, probably my favorite group, and osprey. And so those are the raptors. Some people include a couple other things like caracaras and things, but this is what raptors are. This, by the way, is a picture by Don Quintana, one of my favorite photographers right here, lives a couple blocks from me. These are peregrines from Morro Rock. And so an appreciation of raptors all begins with observation. And we've been looking at raptors since the beginning of time. You just look up into the sky and see these incredible, fast, powerful, magnificent birds, and you see them catching and killing and eating, and it's just an amazing show of independence and freedom and strength. And let me see if you have seen any of these. Out loud, I can't hear you, but say what these are out loud. Do you know what this one is? Yeah, you're right. That's a red-tailed hawk. You can notice these patagial marks right here, these dark on the leading edge. Those are the key. That's the key sign for a red-tailed hawk. And then what are these? Yep, you're right. Those are peregrine falcons. These are immature peregrine falcons. You can see because of the stripy breast here, and this one specifically is a subspecies of the Peel's peregrine falcon up in the islands right off British Columbia. What is this? Yep, you're right. It's a red-tailed hawk. Sometimes you can see with this belly band, and sometimes there's a dark hood, but there's a lot of variety in red-tailed hawks. You see these tail feathers right here? Those tail feathers are banded, and when they get their adult feathers in, they're usually a darkish, like a brick red color. Beautiful hawk, one of our favorites. When I see a hawk in the sky, I just point up and say red tail before I even look at it, and 95% of the time I'm right. The other ones are more rare. So it's a red tail instantly, unless it proves otherwise. Favorite of mine, this is a Cooper's hawk. Doesn't he just look like a stealth bomber jet? And their eye gets it starts as a kind of a lemon yellow color when they're young, and then it gets to a dark blood red as they're adults. Again, one of my favorite hawks. What is this? Do you know? Yeah, that's right. It's a kestrel. And this is the smallest falcon in North America. Beautiful birds. They eat a lot of bugs. They eat a lot of, crickets and grasshoppers and moths, but they also eat mice. And the old-fashioned name was sparrowhawk because they will eat small birds as well. So this is a kestrel, and in the old days, they would call it a sparrowhawk. What is this? Yep, that's our buddy, the peregrine falcon. You can tell because these pointed wings. The falcons here in North America, we have, some small, medium, large, and they are the starting from the small is the kestrel, then we go up to the merlin, then the peregrine and the prairie falcon, about the same size, and then the gyr falcon. So those are the falcon group. What is this? By the way, some of these pictures are my own, some are from Don Quintana, and this one and the following are from Sarah Killingsworth, who yesterday just did that advanced bird photography show, and I appreciate her loaning these pictures to me. Yep, you're right. This is a northern harrier, and this is a male, and the adult males are silver. Isn't that a beautiful hawk? And if you look right around the face, you see kind of a disc of feathers, because they hunt a lot by listening down close to the ground. And so this is kind of a parabolic disc that directs mice sounds into their ears so they can hunt by ear. Anybody got this one? Yep, this is again a little Cooper's hawk. Isn't that beautiful? This is an immature. You see more teardrop a pattern on his chest. When they get old, they get banded orange, but as juveniles, they're more teardrop colors. It's always hard to tell the difference between a Cooper's hawk and a sharp-shinned hawk. That's something that people argue about all the time. Is it a Cooper's or a sharp-shinned hawk? Those are two smaller accipiters, and then you get the larger one, which is the goshawk, which is the large accipiter in North America. Yep, there's our kestrel buddy again. Do you know if this is a male or a female? You're right, this is a male. You can see he's got a little bit more bluish color, a little more salmon there on the back. And another peregrine at the beach. It's really amazing to go to the sand dunes and walk around, and you can watch the peregrines hunting the shorebirds. Just remarkable. What is this one? Yeah, that's right. This is a white-tailed kite. They changed the name and then they changed it back. But right now, I think it's called a white-tailed kite, which is nice because that's how I learned it. They are beautiful birds. And the kites we have on a string, the kites we have on a string are named after the bird. The bird is not named after the paper thing on the string, because they flutter and hover over their prey, and that's called kiting. Yep, you got it. That's a bald eagle. And these are some of the raptors that you'll see here in North America. And when you observe those things, you'll notice that many countries throughout time have used raptors as political symbols of strength and power and independence, like don't mess with me because I'm big and I'm strong. And so our relationship with raptors starts with observation, and it goes on to connections of identity. And then they were revered in a religious sort of way. We've named gods after them, especially in Egypt, the god Horus and the god Mot. We've found falcon mummies in tombs, which is pretty remarkable. We find so these are some of the gods, the goddess Horus and the god Horus and the goddess Mot. And so these are our inscriptions you'll find in tombs and in the hieroglyphics in Egypt. And not only that, you will find beautiful carvings and jewelry made out of gold and precious jewels. And over here on the right, you'll see mummies. So we have been interacting with raptors from the beginning of time, revering their strength, revering their beauty, and even giving them religious significance. But then someplace, somewhere a long time ago, somebody thought, wow, I wonder if we could ever work together. If there could be a connection beyond collecting their feathers or revering them or stuffing them as mummies, I wonder if we could ever have a working relationship with raptors. And that was the earliest interactions were for a way to get food, and we'll get that in a little bit. Here's just a little bit of a timeline of human and raptor interaction. Again, ancient Egypt, it's gone all through several cultures throughout the world, and we've seen falconry itself took a really high place in society and government in the Middle Ages and towards the Renaissance. And then when people could hunt a rabbit or a quail with a gun, there was a decline in falconry because it was really a way to get food. And then when you can get food easier, then there was a decline of falconry. And then we've seen a revival of falconry in the 1900s. And in 2010, UNESCO made it a human, what do they call it? A human heritage activity, something like that. So again, in ancient times, the first partnership was a way to get food. I don't know if you can ever imagine trying to run around in the desert trying to catch a rabbit. It would be so difficult. And if you're hungry, if you're starving, trying to get a rabbit, throwing rocks, throwing sticks or whatever in the old days, it would be really frustrating. And then if you see a hawk go down and grab a rabbit and take it off, you think, oh my gosh, that was so easy for him, so hard for me. I wonder if I could catch a hawk and we could work in partnership. And that was the start of falconry. Now, the oldest record I could find, and you may find some older ones, the oldest one I could find was in a carving in a tell in Syria, and that was dated 5,500 BCE. That's a long time ago. So we've had several thousand years of our interaction with raptors as a way to get food. And it wasn't just in the Middle East, it spread all over the world, and it became a hunting activity, again, through many cultures all through the world. And then it became a prestige activity when it wasn't needed so much for hunting, just to put food on your table, but it has spread throughout the world through many different cultures, noticed on paintings and carvings and several things like that. So here's an interesting little side note. Early on, people have been using pigeons to get messages back and forth because of the pigeon's ability to go right back to where they are homing or where they're hanging out. And those are called homing pigeons or passenger pigeons. And so these have been used to put a little note on their leg and send it back. So when you're out in battle and you want to get messages back to the home front, you take one of your pigeons, stick a note on it, and goes back. Well, this has happened from a long time in the past. And it's also happened in modern days. In World War I, World War II, here's somebody sending out a passenger pigeon out of a tank saying, hey, we need help, throwing the pigeon out, hoping it makes back to headquarters so they can get a message to supplement the troops. Here's the Nazi prison corps. Himmler was in charge of the pigeon corps of the Nazis. I don't know if you know that. And as a result of messages being sent by pigeons, someone said, you know what? If we could intercept those messages, that would be helpful to us. So they developed a way to train falcons to catch the pigeons, to get the message, to intercept the communications of the enemy. Isn't that crazy? And this happened in World War I and World War II. And Britain had a force called the Falcon Force, and it was going strong. And they said, we're noticing pigeons leaving the cliffs of England, heading towards Germany. That's probably not good. What can we do? So they got a bunch of falconers, and they had the falcons cruising the cliffs of Dover, catching any pigeon that was coming or going, because and there you go. You have interactions of humans with raptors, even for a military sense. Isn't that crazy? In fact, the United States in the 1940s, 1942, was seeing what England was doing, and they were starting their own Falcon Force when things came to an end. So it never got started. It never actually took off in the United States, but they were getting it started. Isn't that crazy? So the thing about falcons and hawks and raptors is we have used them to catch food, and we've used them for military reasons. But even if you are a pacifist and a vegetarian, I think there are still interesting things about human interactions with raptors, because raptors now are using to support the things and protect the things we love, like wine, blueberries, Animal health and airplane flights. I hope to get on an airplane and not have it crash into the river like that Tom Hanks movie, because it sucked in a bunch of birds in the engines. I'm glad that there's a falconer working at the airport, scaring birds off the runway so I can be safe. And so, hey, the other thing in the top left, you see this young lady. She is a working falconer. There are a lot of females and people of color in falconry, which I think is really cool. There's a lot of Hispanic falconers, a lot of Black falconers, a lot of female falconers. It's not just an old white male thing. It is spread. There are a lot of Hmong falconers in the United States making a living with falcons to protect the things we love. But see that bottom right note? Not everyone can have a falconer. And this is, if you're a note taker, this is where your notes start. Because of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act in 1918, essentially all birds are protected, except things like chickens and turkeys and things that have been traditionally hunted, doves, quails, ducks, things like that. Essentially, all birds are protected. And so you cannot go to the beach and find a feather and stick it in your hat. That feather, it's not legal for you to have that feather you found at the beach. I don't know if you realize that, but hats and feathers have caused the decline of egrets and almost wiped them out in the early days because people wanted beautiful hats with beautiful feathers. And so this treaty says nobody can have feathers, nobody can have birds, nobody can kill birds. And as soon as you make a rule, then you have to have the exceptions, except, and here are the exceptions. So the exceptions are these 6 things, and that's what we're going to be talking about. And all these symbols are the things that we will be talking about as we go through the next few points. So if you're a note taker, the first one is rehab. You can interact physically with hawks, falcons, eagles, and all that if you are a licensed rehab person. And right now, in our area, Pacific Wildlife Care is the one who holds that permit. So if you love raptors and you want to get some hands-on action with raptors, go volunteer at Pacific Wildlife Care. You'll be feeding raptors. You'll be helping with raptor surgeries. You'll be training raptors to get back to strength and releasing them back into the wild. So if you really love raptors and you're not a hunter, and you don't care about the military, but you want to be involved in raptors, you can be involved in raptor rehab. Pacific Wildlife Care, or wherever you live, there's a place, there's a wildlife rehab wherever you live, and you'll have a chance to get involved with that. So here's the thing about the rehab deal. The state gives us authority to hold and touch and handle and work with a broken raptor to fix them and put them back into the wild. That's the only reason you can do rehab, is to put them back into the wild. The state says you can't have a raptor for a pet. It's not allowed. Raptors are wild and they should be out flying in the wild. You cannot have one as a pet. So if you are one of those people who like to work with them, you can work with them, but you only get 180 days and then it's got to be released. If it can't be released, if it can't hunt successfully on its own, then here's the bad news. You got to put that bird down, because it's not okay to have a broken raptor as a pet. So that leads us to the next permit, which is the education permit. The education permit is only allowed, you're only allowed to use non-releasable birds for education. You can't use a good, healthy, wild bird for education. A good, healthy, wild bird should be flying out doing what it's supposed to do. You cannot go grab a wild, healthy bird and use it for education. You can only use non-releasable birds. Non-releasable is a bird that's broken and has been fixed, like a broken wing hawk or a blind hawk or something. And so Camp Ocean Pines has non-releasable birds. A Zoo to You has non-releasable birds. Pacific Wildlife Care has non-releasable birds. Going back to the previous slide, most wildlife rehab people, they just can't put those birds down, and so they get an education permit as well. And if a bird is deemed valuable for education, they can keep it, but not on the rehab permit. They have to keep it on an education permit. So anyway, that's point 2. non-releasable birds can be used for education. A non-releasable bird is also a captive bred bird. Captive bred birds cannot be released into the wild. We don't want captive bred birds messing around with wild DNA of the wild populations. So if it's a captive bred bird, it cannot be released, and it can be used for education. The one caveat there is captive bred birds can be released if they're in a program to encourage the dwindling population. Like the Peregrine Fund will breed birds and put them back into the wild, working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. But we're getting a little too detailed. Okay, falconry. The third way you can handle a bird is if you're a falconer. And falconry is hunting wild game with a trained raptor, period. That's what it is. It's not having a cool bird as a pet. It is a way to catch game. And so if you are a hunter, you have to have a hunting license. And then if you want to be a falconer, you have to get a falconry license as well. And to get a falconry license, you have to pass a knowledge test, build the enclosures, gather equipment. Your equipment and enclosures have to be inspected by the Fish and Wildlife officers to make sure that you have the way to get food, the way to care for them, the way to make sure they're happy and healthy. And after you get all that, then you get a permit. But you can't catch a bird and hunt until you have a crusty master falconer willing to apprentice you. This is one of the most highly regulated things we've got going in the state. If you want to be a falconer, you can take the test, you can build the stuff, you can get an inspection, but until you can convince some crusty old master falconer to sponsor you, you can't be a falconer. And that's the hard step, because these old guys and gals don't really want to put up with young persons that don't know anything. And so if you're lucky enough to get sponsored and pass all that stuff, then you can be a falconer. And there are 4 steps of falconry, and those are the 4 subpoints. So if you're a note taker, here are and if you've got 10 fingers, I've given you 6 of the fingers, here comes the other 4. Ready? The steps of falconry are 4. Trap, train, hunt, and release. Can you say that with me? Yeah, out loud, of course. Ready? Trap, train, hunt, and release. I can see some of you and you're not doing that. Okay, I can't hear you, but I can read your lips. Ready? So there are 4 steps in falconry. They are trap, train, hunt, and release. Okay, good. I saw most of you moving. Okay, now the first step is to trap. Now, only first-year birds can be trapped because their chance of survival through their first year is very slim. I would say most first-year birds die. They either die in the nest or they die in their first year, because it's hard to make a living as a raptor. You have to be healthy all the time, and you have to avoid predators of your own, and you have to be able to catch food. And that's kind of a high request for survival. So there are statistics, 60, 70, 80, up to 90% of raptors die in their first year. So if you're out trapping and you get a second-year bird, and if you don't know if it's a juvenile bird or not, obviously you can't have a falconry license, because you need to be able to tell the difference. So if you catch a second-year bird, you instantly have to release it. You are not allowed to have a second-year bird. You can only have a first-year bird. And how do you trap something? It's simple. You study your subject and you find what they like. If I was going to trap, I don't know. If you were going to try to trap me, you would study me and you'd say, wow, Chris really likes chocolate. And you'd say, hey, Chris, I got some chocolate right here over on the table. And I'd say, oh, chocolate, really? And I'd run over and I'd grab the chocolate. And then you do that 2 or 3 times. You might even add a whistle like, hey, Chris, chocolate right over here. And you'd see me on a walk and you'd say, hey, Chris, got some chocolate. And I'd be right there. And after you study your subject and know what they like, then you set a trap, whether it's a net, whether it's a pit, whether it's a mist net, whether it's a loop net. There's all different kinds of traps, but you put the thing that they like in a trap and you call them, and then you have patience and you trap a bird. This was a bird. I was trying to trap a first year red-tailed hawk, and this young red shoulder hawk came down and grabbed the trap. And this hawk is not legal for falconry, was not legal for falconry as an apprentice, so I instantly had to let it go. But that's trapping. Step number 2. By the way, just going backwards in your memory, there were 4 steps of falconry. The first one was, we just did it, come on, it was trap. That's right, trap. The second is, train. The third is hunt, and the fourth is release. Let's say it all together: trap, train, hunt, and release. Okay, we're on step 2 now. The training is a lot like trapping. You figure out what they like, and you offer it to them, and they come to it. So it's kind of a we will work for food situation. It's the same reason you go to work. You don't go to work because you like work. You go to work because you get a paycheck. And if you find some joy to it, that's great. But our people pay you to do stuff they don't want. And so you go to work because you get a paycheck. And the hawks go to work because they get a paycheck, and the paycheck is they get good food, and then they get to go fly, and then they get to go catch stuff. So they get to do what they want, but it is a conditioned response. It's regular old Skinner behavioral modification, conditioned response. You come to the food when I whistle, and then when I'm out in the field when I whistle, you come to my glove, and then I train you to come to the lure, and then my goal is to get you into top shape. People say, oh, those falconers, they starved their birds. Well, if you starved, if you were overseeing a prize fighter, if you starved your prize fighter, he would get into the ring and he would get wiped out. And if you overfed your prize fighter, he would get in the ring and run out of gas and get wiped out. You want your hawks and falcons to be in top condition. You want them to fly strong and be keen and ready to go after what they are hunting. So your goal is to keep them in top shape, not starving shape. You want them to be ready to hunt, which, by the way, is step number 3. That is hunting. And hunting has 2 job responsibilities. I've got to flush game, either myself, kicking bushes or hitting sticks, or if I have a dog or something chasing bunnies or quail out of the bushes. And then the hawk's job is to pursue and catch that animal. And the hawk really likes his job because that's what they were born to do. They can't get enough of flying to catch the game, and they love it. And then at the end, I give them a snack and we go hunt some more. And the hawk says, oh my gosh, I get to hunt twice in a day, or 3 times or 4 times. That's great. They love it. So that's hunting. Just a little side note. This picture is Lindsay. She went to Cal Poly here in San Luis Obispo. This is her goshawk. This was taken yesterday. All the falconers in California are in Bishop right now because there's a gathering of falconers, a meet where they all go hang out together, and they show off together, show off their birds. They go hunt together. And I have missed every falconers meet because it's on the same weekend as the Morro Bay Bird Festival. But anyway, this is Lindsay, and this is a rabbit she caught with her goshawk in Bishop yesterday. So again, there are females, there are people of color. This is not just an old white guy sport. And this is Lindsay and her goshawk yesterday in Bishop. This is me and my Cooper's hawk. This is in Tehachapi. Look at that beautiful red eye. Doesn't that look like a fierce bird? And then the 4th step. Oh, since we're on the 4th step, the 3rd step was hunt. The 2nd step was trap. The first train. The 1st step was trap. Let's do those in order. Ready? Trap, train, hunt, and release. Yes, trap, train, hunt, and release. Now you really only hunt in the fall and the winter, because it's not fair to hunt when baby birds, when birds are on nests, or when baby birds are too young in them to figure out, or baby animals can't avoid the predators. So you only hunt in the fall and the winter, not in the spring or the summer. And in the spring and the summer, you release your hawks and let them go back to the wild, because they are now molting. They are growing new feathers. And you know what? It's really boring to not hunt and to watch a bird grow feathers. It's kind of like watching the grass grow. So falconers release their birds back into the wild, where the birds go and grow and breed and are successful because they have been hunting, they've had good medical care, they've been protected, they're in good shape, so they're released in the spring to grow feathers and to breed. Now, what does a falconer do when they don't have a bird? They go to work by doing captive breeding, or they go to work doing abatement of work, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But back on the release, these are my notes from the last Cooper's Hawk I had in 2018. It's a Cooper's Hawk I got as a young bird here in Los Osos. It was a local bird. It was a suburban bird, so I hunted it in a suburban setting. I would walk around the city and hunt birds. So if you saw a Cooper's Hawk in your feeder, it could have been mine. I don't know. So this was a beautiful bird, and that he was released after a couple years. And see these hidden columns are his weight and the feeding and other things that were on my notes that I do every day. But you can see it was time to release this bird. So I don't want to release a bird with any gear on it. So I developed removable jesses. So I would get him out, take off all his gear, and let him fly. And then I'd go into the house, I'd have lunch, I'd have a cup of coffee, I'd stay in the house for 2 or 3 hours, and the bird is going, hey, we normally go hunting together and I'm out here on my own. What am I supposed to do? And then if he came back at the night, I'd swing a lure. If he came back, I'd put him in for the night, and I would let him go free again the next day. And of course, I'd feed him dinner, but then I would let him go every day. And then you know what? There was a good looking female that kept flying around this bird. And then a few days later, he didn't come back. So this is called hacking. You get him ready to go back into the wild, just as you calm them down, which is called manning, then you wild them back up to let them go back into the wild. So that's how falconry works. The 4 steps are trap, train, hunt, and yes, release. And then you release it back into the wild. So now back to the 6 points. We've done several of them, but the next thing is called abatement. This is a new thing that's happening that I'm really kind of excited about. This is using the natural wildlife relationships, tens of thousands of years of predator-prey relationships, and now they're being used to protect crops and human health. So we've had invasions of European starlings and sparrows, English sparrows that are damaging crops and eating things and pooping in places they're not supposed to poop, and causing bacterial situations that close beaches and close cities and close hospitals and close airports. And so now abatement is a way that we can protect these things. If you're in the program Steve Schubert gave the other day about the peregrine falcons, he mentioned a couple of these things. You will see falconers at landfills. Almost every landfill in California now has a falconer, because see, these gulls, they go slopping around in the landfill, and then they go across the way to the spinach field and dump around to get some salad for lunch, but then they bring diseases into our spinach field. So some of the spinach fields were closed down by USDA and saying, hey, you've got E. coli in your spinach, stop pooping in your fields. And the farmers are saying, hey, we're not pooping in our fields. And they say, well, get the animals out of your fields. We don't have animals in our fields. And what it was the gulls were going from the landfill over to the crops and causing problems. And so now many of the landfills are trying to disperse these gulls so they're not spreading nasty stuff all over the place. Same thing is happening at resorts and schools. Morro Bay High has a full-time falconer, and they're used to chase the gulls around because they're pooping on kids all through lunchtime and spreading nasties. And so Morro Bay High has a full-time falconer. I think that's pretty cool. Catalina Island has a full-time falconer, because if the beaches get closed, the whole economy in Catalina depends on beaches being open. So they have a full-time falconer chasing the gulls and the pigeons away from the piers so people can swim safely. Buildings, hospitals, factory, factories, all of those things have to be protected from bird poop on their filters and on their equipment. Again, obviously, wine grapes, blueberries, cherries, things like that are now protected by falcons. The same thing with airports, waterways, things like that. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. In fact, I think it's a great thing for kids who not everybody's made for college. Some people just want to be outside working with animals, and this opens up a new way for them to make a living. Again, working with thousands of years of natural processes to protect things that we love.
5 minutes, Chris.
Okay, thanks. Captive breeding is the next one. If you want to get your hands on falconers, captive breeding, that's what the Peregrine Fund was all about, and up at UC Santa Cruz, captive breeding to reintroduce birds back into where they have been in decline because of DDT. Falconers also have been very helpful in condor recovery. So captive breeding is one of those things. The next thing is science. Science, you can get a scientific permit to do migration studies, population studies, things like that. And you know what? Military uses, I can't even talk about. Don't even know about this because it's so secret. But there's still, stuff about how can we get a tape recorder or a video recording of a place in a city where we're not allowed. And so birds are still being used by the military. Animals are still involved there. Ecotourism is a reason to have science permits to know where birds are coming and going. So we put trackers on birds. We can know where they're migrating, where they're coming, and where they're going. And that's very important because then if you are in Costa Rica or all my friends in Colombia, you can say, this is a great place and this is the time because look where all these birds are coming and going. So science and ecotourism, and then just the regular old protection of birds because, again, the Swainson's hawk up in Canada and the Midwest are going down to Argentina. So while we may stop using DDT here, we've found tens of thousands of birds dead in other countries that don't have the same regulations because the birds don't read they don't have a border control check. They fly wherever they want to. And so we need to make sure that we're doing policies that are protecting birds. Okay, I'm gonna stop this right now. Oh, you know what? Let me just zip through to the very last slide. And that is the peregrine falcon story here on Morro Rock. Steve Schubert's got a book. I think you can buy it online or buy it in the Morro Bay Natural History Museum to learn about the raptors right here that you can see right now today at Morro Rock. And it's a very fascinating read about 50 years worth of peregrine falcon nesting here on Morro Rock. So I'm going to stop the screen sharing. Bob, I don't know if there's any questions. We've got maybe 2 or 3 minutes for questions. Bob, if you've got a question, I'll do my best to answer.
I saw one. Are you familiar with Phil Callahan's work with Raptors and the Department of Defense?
No, I'm not. I don't know if how interested I am going to be in that, but it sounds very interesting. But maybe a little bit secretive. Okay, but I might look into that. Okay, Bob, you got another question?
Yeah, another one. Are birds used for abatement released back every year?
You cannot use a wild native bird for abatement because you can't use a wild raptor to make money. You can only use a captive bred raptor, and captive bred raptors cannot be released back into the wild. So I don't know if that it's a little more detailed, but that's the short answer. Got another one, Bob?
Yep, there's another one. Do you have any comment about the sighting of a stellar sea eagle on the East Coast?
Incredible. Would love to see it. If I could, sometimes birds get lost and we get lucky and see some things that don't know where they're at. The stellar sea eagles have made news this year, and that's a pretty cool thing. I know some people have gone to see it specifically. I haven't, but that's a cool sighting.
All right, and the last one I see is there any data on how the falcons do once released?
I see my own bird flying around. So it's really funny. when you have falcons, you put them in your backyard on a perch in the day to get weather, to get sunshine and rain. And so once you release your falcons and then you catch a new one the next year, you put them on a perch, and you might have 2 or 3 perches, and you go out there and say, oh, I only have 1 bird. But why are there 2 or 3 birds on the perch? It's last year's bird came back saying, hey, I'm ready, let's go hunting. And so, yes, the birds do fine once they're released because they are healthy, they're strong, and they know how to hunt.
I think that's about it.
Okay, well, we're going to close this one down. The next thing that we've got going today is John Muir Jack Laws, and he's going to be talking about how to keep a birder's journal. And that's going to happen at the top of the hour. We're going to close down in just a couple minutes here and shut the whole program down. If you want to come back for the other one, come back a couple minutes before the top of the hour so you can get in the room. We're really glad you came. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you want to contact me, I'm here in Los Osos. The support at morrowbaybirdfestival.org right there, that email that will get to me. And if you want to make a donation, we'd love to have a donation so we can live to bird another day in person next year in Morro Bay. Thanks for coming, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for John Muir Laws next up at the top of the hour. We're going to close this down, but come back in about 5 minutes. See you later. Bye-bye.